There's a lot of speculation about what the Federal Reserve is going to do, what's going to happen to the stock market depending on who becomes president. I'm going to be going through some of the biggest financial news stories with my friend, Todd Bubba Horwitz. Todd, thank you so much for joining me.
Stephen, it's always great to be on your show. You have one of the best shows in the business.
Oh, thank you so much. So just some background. You have been trading stocks for over 40 years. You've done it from your living room. You've done it down in the stock pits. You've helped people make tremendous amounts of money. I want to get your thoughts. I keep hearing that the United States will have a commercial real estate meltdown. It hasn't seemed to happen yet. And yet, over the last week or so, I've been reading about buildings in major cities dropping their sales price by 30, 40, 50, sometimes 60%. Does this hurt the bank? Does the building owner take it on the chin? How does this affect the economy and the markets?
Well, it's going to hurt everybody, but we've seen over the past few years, a lot of the big houses have bought up a lot of the real estate anyways and use it to rent. So it's not going to hurt a lot of the individuals, but it will affect the pay and it will affect the money. But again, we're going to see a meltdown because, we learned through COVID that, if you're not in a customer service business where you have to be there face to face, a lot of people don't go to the office, but once or twice a week, if they go at all. That allowed people to move away from the cities, which I think you'll see New York and Chicago, have some real big distress. But it will eventually have an effect because, again, the banks are involved in here as well. And that I believe that the banks are very over leveraged as usual. And of course, because they have the American taxpayer to bail them out when they screw everything up. So, but I do think it will be a problem. But remember, we're in the middle of an election cycle. We've got about 75 days until the election. And the party in power is going to try to do everything they can to keep things at least somewhat static. We all know that there's a ton of problems in the economy, but I think they're going to try to hold things up until afterwards. But don't be surprised if there's a problem before. Very similar to 2008 when Paulson came out on Face the Nation in September and said the banks were safe and sound. And of course, we found out in October that wasn't the case.
Yeah. I know you're a fan of Chicago. The DNC is going on there right now. What are your thoughts on that? I'm seeing a lot of energy within the convention, but Nielsen's rating is saying that viewership is down 22%, and it seems that people don't really care what's being said at the DNC.
I think conventions are more like pep rallies, and I don't think there are a lot of big deal one way or the other. Unfortunately, there's so many places to watch it now. It's really hard to get a true rating. It's not like when I grew up where you had 3 stations to look at and you could watch it. Now you could watch it between Fox, CNN, CNBC. They're everywhere. And plus the fact that a lot of people actually watch it later or watch it, on a tape delay. So it's hard to say. Listen, it's a pep rally. They're creating a lot of energy. You've got all the big speakers there. You had Oprah speaking. You had, the Obama speaking. It's all a bunch of, what, right? I mean, again, both of them. This is all trying to get everybody pumped up and ready to go and vote. And it's just a bunch of lies that our politicians tell us. And you can take either side of the aisle on our politicians because they're all lying to us one way or the other, with one exception. I do believe that Donald Trump is one of the few honest politicians. You may not like him, but I think he's one of the few honest that really has the American people's best interest at heart.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because polling data, depending on who's being polled, is showing Kamala Harris has this big bump. She's got this momentum. But then you see when you go state by state, Trump is actually leading in many of the electoral college important states. But then you have Polymarkets, the betting website. They have now swung back, showing a 7-point increase of Donald Trump winning. How do you take all of this data when you're thinking about it?
Well, I think the best market to look at is the betting market. That will give you the best thing. I mean, that's real money. And if you look at like Betfair out of London, okay, they give you a two-sided market, and they'll tell you who's really in the lead. And I think Trump is probably still in the lead. Remember, in this country, our news outlets are no longer news outlets. They're opinion polls, and they're there to brainwash, whether if you're watching Fox, which is more leans to the right, if you're watching CNN, which is totally left. We don't get the straight news. That is always the problem. So really, we won't know until they go to the polls. I mean, you know, I hear people talking here in Las Vegas, and a lot of people that would never think about voting for Donald Trump are now thinking about voting for Donald Trump. So I think that when you get into the polls, nobody wants to admit to it because people are afraid. And you know what's going on in this country. There's a lot of dissension. There's a lot of hatred that has been really built by the party in power right now. When you go to the polls, I think that Donald Trump is probably in the lead. And that's what the Betfair betting site tells me. And that's the cleanest I can get because that's where money is really changing hands.
Yeah. And you're a money guy. So I know that you, like myself, I consider myself a libertarian on paper. But I like Donald Trump. I like that he's not a politician. I like that he has business experience. I like that he's anti-war. I like that he supports Israel. I like that he wants this Russia-Ukraine thing over with. I also like RFK Jr. It looks like he may actually be endorsing Donald Trump here very quickly. What are your thoughts on Kamala? Do you think that she's really, went from a drag on the ticket to this super popular person, or are we in fact being manipulated by the Mockingbird media and all of the polling data?
I think we're being manipulated. I mean, look at what she's accomplished. Nothing. She's accomplished letting criminals out of jail. She's accomplished letting the illegals flood in this country as the borders are. She's done nothing her entire career. She's happened to slide by, first of all, in a Democratic state, which is very hard for a Republican to win anyways. And now on the ticket she is. I mean, she is, I don't want to say she's dumb because obviously she got to where she is, but she is not the sharpest tool in the shed, as they say, and certainly doesn't have an understanding of how an economy works and how the money works, which is what we really, as citizens, we really care how the money works. Because listen, we're paying way too much tax for what we get. And we're doing way too much supporting of Ukraine. We're doing way too much supporting of illegal immigration. A lot of that money all comes from us. And that's one of the reasons that inflation refuses to come down, because that is the hidden tax of inflation. You inflate products to a thing. There's a federal excise tax in everything that you buy. So that goes right to the federal government. So you're paying more tax because you're paying higher prices for goods and services. So I think she's done a horrible job. I think she has no idea what's going on. And I think she's being manipulated or puppeted, like from the deep state, very much as Joe Biden was, because he was clueless to begin with.
Yeah. I watched one of her speeches, and then I watched the full Obama speech at the DNC. And my goodness, like, what a difference in ability to articulate a message. She sounded like somebody that was like mentally incapable of forming a sentence compared to Barack Obama. Do you think that's why Barack and Michelle and Oprah and others that are articulate are being put out in the front and she's being kept in the back? Do you think that's all purposeful? Let me interrupt this interview for 1 minute, because what I want to share could help some of you save a lot of money. Interest rates have dropped, and right now, the perfect time to call my friends at American Financing. They are a family-owned company that is helping people just like you create meaningful saving every month. Their salary-based mortgage consultants look at your full financial picture, all of your debts, including those frustrating credit card balances where you're paying upwards of 20 to 30% in interest payments every month. And they work with you to create a loan program where they wipe that all out, and in some cases have some cash left over to create some emergency savings. American Financing is a true partner in helping you and your family save money. They never charge any upfront or hidden fees. It costs you absolutely nothing to find out how much money you can save. Their average customer is saving over $800 a month. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. I want you to call 888-686-8030. Again, that's 888-686-8030, or visit americanfinancing.net/Gardner.
Oh, I think it's 100%. I mean, listen, I called Barack Obama when he first ran the first time a carny huckster. I mean, he is a guy he is a brilliant speaker, and he's very convincing with what he says. I mean, he did set civil rights back 100 years as the president, but he is a speaker. And they're doing the same thing with Kamala that they did with Joe Biden. They're basically keeping him in the basement, keeping him away from the public eye, because if anybody would hear her speak for any more than 2 or 3 minutes, they would know that she is not the person to run this country.
Yeah. Okay. You touched on inflation and illegal immigration. I, from all my research, believe these are the two biggest issues going into the election. Why is inflation having such a hard time stabilizing it? Is because the government continues to print money? Is it because the government is giving so much to illegals and now workers' money is competing with free money to illegals? What's the key indicators in your mind?
Well, those are pretty key indicators, right? They can't bring him down. Okay, we've got a Federal Reserve, we've got a stock market that is inflated based on the federal rate cuts, which are not coming so fast. So maybe they'll come in September, but again, they've been promising for a year. The next one we get, I think, will not be bullish for the market. I think it'll be bearish for the market because I think it will signal a recession. But we have all this money going to illegals. Okay, they get stipends, they get health care. Okay, they get better treatment than Americans. And if we go back to 2021, when Joe Biden took office, 66% of people that have been employed since Biden took office are illegals. Only 33% have been Americans. And of that 33%, half of those are government jobs. The federal government was never intended to be the largest employer in the world. But you and me get to pay the tax to employ all these worthless people that there's no job for them. Okay. I mean, the bottom line is, why do we still have so many post offices in this country? Nobody uses the mail system anymore. I mean, from my house, there's 5 post offices in 3 miles. I mean, that's all money that we just keep throwing down the drain. The government doesn't care. If we live like the government does, we'd be in bankruptcy court or jail.
Yeah. Man, wow. Well said. Do you think that the inflation is largely due to government policy? Meaning, if somebody came in with a different policy, could we see that inflation correct quicker?
We could. We'd have to do a lot. I mean, listen, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, right? This has been going on for years, and it has to start with government spending. Okay, all these billions of dollars we gave to Ukraine, for what? There shouldn't have been a war there in the first place. All of the business we're doing with China, we shouldn't be involved with them. In fact, I believe that China is the one who is suppressing the grain prices so that American farmers will be forced to sell their farmland so that they can take over and control the food supply. And if you control the food supply, you control the world. It's more important than money. So I think you have to stop spending. Okay, we went from a deficit. And again, listen, some of the numbers are inflated because of obviously inflation. I mean, when I started trading, the Dow was 800. It's now 40,000. So, but again, you look at the inflation that has been caused by spending. You have to stop spending. You have to stop giving the money away. You have to stop these supplemental programs. Okay. And of course, Social Security. They use that Social Security money, but Social Security age should not be 65. It should be about 80. Because people are living to 80. And the original design of Social Security, even though it's a socialist program, was that it came in at 65. The average living age in those days was 62. So it gave it enough so they could run a legalized Ponzi scheme, which is really what we're doing. I mean, the fiat currency system is all manipulated. The central banking system has been stealing from people since the 1600s. Before the Federal Reserve was built, the central banking system started in England. And they've been stealing ever since. They've been devaluing currency. Why? Because it helps the rich get richer and continues to keep us as serfs. And if we continue at this pace, we will have a communist country and we will be serfs.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are feeling that and having that worry, maybe more than they've ever had in their entire life. I know money can be made in the stock market, whether it's going up or down. However, I'm reading that the VIX is indicating rough times ahead. What does this mean, and do you agree with that?
Well, the volatility index it's a gauge on options. Okay, it's telling you whether options are being bought to open or sold to open. The VIX is right now trading at 17. It's a little bit higher this morning, but 2 weeks ago on that Monday when we were down like 1,000, the VIX spiked to 66. Okay. That's they call it a fear gauge. It's really just a function of the markets, but at 17%, it is not really that high. It has come down year after year. When I was originally trading on the floor in 1980, the average VIX was 30 and the markets were flourishing. Let's remember one thing, okay? If America is going to exist and we are going to continue to be the number one country in the world and be the place, then the stock market's going to continue to go up 8.5% year over year. That's what it's done since in the history, and it's gone up 10% year over year since 1950. So if we're going to continue to grow and not become a communist country, which I think we're very close to, but then you want to be an investor. You want to be a holder of good, solid companies, Apple, whatever. Companies that make money because they're going to go and they're going to stay up with the cost of inflation. They're going to make you money. Okay. If that changes, if the stock market collapses forever, then there's a much bigger problem for us as Americans. It has nothing to do. So I think that you can make money on both sides, but for the average American, I think you put your money in your 401k, you put your money in your IRA, you let it grow, and you don't try to outtime or outsmart the market, because who would ever have thunk that this market could gone up so much since last October, all based on the theory that the Fed was going to cut rates, when in reality, at 4 or 5%, rates are still cheap. My first mortgage was 14%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I remember my mother-in-law telling me that she refinanced from 21% down to 17%, and they thought they were geniuses. And then you have my generation that's used to like 2 and 3% mortgages going, wow, like we'll never survive. Interesting to see the passage of time.
I'll just say, I'll add one thing, that when you have mortgages, when you have rates that low, what that really allows is it allows the upper 10%, the upper 5% of the population to make a fortune. Okay. For example, I have 2 homes. I own them both outright. But when I could get a mortgage for 2.5% on both, I mortgaged them both to the hilt, because I can make more money putting it in the market and trading the market than the 2.5% that I'm paying. Okay. So they're not benefiting the little guy with those low rates. They're benefiting the big guys with those rates, because the little guy can't take advantage of it anyways. And if you live on a normal budget, then you're going to have to live within your means anyways. But unfortunately, BlackRock and others have accumulated a lot of the real estate, so rents are higher. There's a whole bunch of things going on that came all under the watch of President Biden and crew, because they're the ones that are supposed to be the party of the little guy that made it better for Meta and Google and companies like that, who went to them and asked them to put on regulations so that they could destroy the small guy and nobody could ever come and compete. And you know as well as I do that if you don't have competition, then we're going to have to overpay for everything.
Yeah. We're seeing that right now. I listened into the Elon Musk, Donald Trump conversation. During that, Elon Musk articulated this idea of the government needs accountability, right? We've all known that is true, but he said it in a way that made a lot of sense, where he said, listen, we wouldn't have this out of control inflation if the government wasn't abusing taxpayer money, sending it to foreign nations, spending it on stupid programs, being wasteful with military contracts, things like that. He said, if the government could get their spending under control, like a business like Tesla or Twitter or something, that inflation would come way down, and it would allow millions, tens of millions of more Americans the opportunity to live the American dream. Now he's saying he's willing to serve in that capacity. Do you see that ever happening? Or is Washington, D.C. such a swamp that they would do anything they can to continue to abuse American taxpayer money?
I think they will continue to try to abuse American taxpayer money. I was really hoping, and this goes back to the potential of President Trump's second term. I really believe that if he got the second term, then he was going after everybody. And going to try to straighten out the mess that is there. Because again, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, all politicians are not all, I obviously can't say all, but most are in there for the money. Okay. And the money that they make from deals with China, from monies they make with deals with Ukraine. I've always said that I would like to become an island. Okay. I would like to cut out the rest of the world and just have the United States of America. Let's work here. Let's live here. Let's have fun here. And let's make money here and quit worrying about everybody else. But of course, this country wants globalism, not this country, but this administration wants globalism I don't want globalism. I want my country to be the place that I dream of. And it's no longer what I was when I was a kid. Now, again, you're younger than I am, but this is nowhere near the United States that I grew up in. And we do need to have them stop spending our money. We've got to put on term limits, because having a guy like Joe Biden, 50 years in office, what is that all about? That's ridiculous. When the country ran best when the farmers were running the country. Okay, they came in, they served 1 or 2 terms, they went back to their farm, and that was it. Okay, and you kept rotating. You didn't have career criminals that were in office that did nothing but benefit. I mean, look at Schumer, look at McConnell. There's one from each party that I can guarantee you have stolen a fortune over the years.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I can't wait for those guys to get out. What are your thoughts on the White House being so wrong about 818,000 jobs? It seemed like they leaned into this to try to boost Biden's popularity, boost his approval rating. Certainly, we saw a boost in the stock market on this positive data. As this rolls out, is the stock market going to react to this, or are they just going to keep moving forward? What are your thoughts on that story?
Well, I think that they do that annually, and this was obviously a very big number. But if you look back at all the revisions, again, everybody only likes to look at the headline number when it comes out on that first Friday of the month. But every Friday they came out, they reversed lower. In fact, 21 out of the last 23 jobs numbers have been reversed down afterwards. But only everybody cares about the headline number. But what the big money really cares about is if the numbers are bad enough, then they can get those rate cuts, because then the Fed will step in, which again is backwards. This country was not designed to bail out people or to have the Fed make adjustments. I mean, they're so far off of their mandate. They have 2 jobs: price stability and employment. Nothing else. It says nothing in their mandate about manipulating rates or playing with rates or doing any of these things. So it's not a surprise. I knew the jobs were horrible, and I knew they'd been bad. But again, I look at the revisions. Most people don't. But all I have to do is look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and you can see. But they use a bad number to begin with, because they're using what is known as called the U3, which is a 3-month indicator, versus the U6, which is a 6-month indicator, which shows the people who even gave up looking for jobs.
Okay. What do you think happens to the stock market if Kamala Harris wins? What do you think happens to the stock market if Donald Trump wins? Or is the market just going to continue to do what the market does?
I think you'll get an initial burst off of Trump if he wins, but I do believe that the market is in pretty big trouble here. Again, I've said this for a while, and again, I'm not going to back off of it. I think probably about a year now, I said that I'm looking for a 50 to 70% haircut. I am still looking for that haircut to show up. Again, it doesn't announce itself, and it won't, but I think that the banks are over leveraged. I think obviously the United States of America is very over leveraged, and I do believe that there's a lot more problems coming. And you're seeing dramatic amounts of job layoffs at key companies, service jobs, and we've become more of a service country than a manufacturing country. Service jobs don't pay what other jobs pay. So it's a lot harder with higher costs and lower pay to survive. In fact, the PCE has shown month over month that Americans are spending more than they're earning. Okay. And that isn't extravagant spending. That's just spending to live. So I think the market's in trouble no matter who gets in. I don't think they have much more room to hold on to this. Again, I can't say when, but it wouldn't surprise me. And it wouldn't surprise me if something happened before the election, almost to mimic 2008.
Interesting. Okay. Final question then. If the markets do go through a bump or they are in trouble, how does the gold market react to something like that? Is the gold market influenced by presidential elections, or is it more influenced by the stock market going up or down?
Well, I think the gold is influenced by inflation. Gold is influenced by who's in office, by what's going on in the world. But I think at this point in time, I think people are starting to realize with the continue of devaluation of currency, the fiat currency system, which is a manipulated garbage because there's no backing everything. I think people are finally realizing that they may need gold and silver as a potential currency. We could get into a position that you might need that to eat. You might have to have gold and silver and physical. And don't go out and start buying paper gold, because I'm a believer that there's not enough gold in the world to cover the amount of paper that is written. If you're going to own gold, buy physical metals, put them in your safe, whatever, keep them somewhere. You may need them as a currency. And you see, gold just made a new all-time high before pulling back pretty dramatically. But again, that ties into inflation. Gold has been a steady mover year over year, just like the stock markets, and it'll go up and down. Now, again, when that first big meltdown comes, don't be surprised that gold goes down with it on the initial meltdown. Because remember, when things are melting down, people sell everything. They don't think of what they're selling. They just sell, get me out, get me out, get me out. And then you'll start to see. So I would think that if you do see a big sell-off in gold, that's probably more of a buying opportunity. And it takes a lot of heart to step in when it looks like it's going to zero and step in there and buy. But that is exactly what I told everybody, for example, on Monday, 2 weeks ago. This is a time to buy. The markets are still going up. It says this is a one-day wonder or two-day wonder. It's the same thing I said in 1987 when I was on the trading floor. This is a buying opportunity, not a selling opportunity. You just have to be, the biggest thing is don't put yourself in an over-leveraged position and don't take too much exposure to what your net worth is. And then you'll be fine because you'll be able to hold through any storm.
Okay, great. Todd, if people want to follow you online or get in contact with you, I know you do weekly calls. What is the best way for them to do that?
They can go to bubbatrading.com, or if anybody has any direct questions, as I've done in the past, you can email me direct at bubba@bubbatrading.com. Would love to hear from you, love to help you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And I do a Monday night call that you're invited to. I have to send me an email, and I'll send you an invitation.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on, taking time out of your day. I'll put a link to that down below, but thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. The best show on YouTube.
Oh, thank you.